Gary, Giles and Chris, respectively, the drummer, keyboardist and singer of Marquis De Sade, to talk about the band's resurrection and much more besides. Hello guys.
Hi there. Hi.
Hi guys.
Chris is speaking to us directly from
Andalusia, Spain.
Buenos dias, Chris.
Buenos dias. Alright, buenas tardes.
También. So, on the 12th June, Marquis De Sade will be playing in Hampton. Is this really going to be the band's first gig in about 4 decades?
Well, I think that's about right, Chris, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, I think so, mate, yeah.
It's been a long time coming. It would have been a bit earlier, but COVID restricted. I mean, we got together really just before COVID. I think that would have been in the January or just before.
And I think it was. I think, I can remember that rehearsal was pretty amazing.
We were having plans for more rehearsals, and Giles and Paulie on board as well now, and then we just couldn't carry on really with COVID, so it restricted everything we were doing, all our plans, which is a bit of a shame. But we're where we are now, and it's turned out really quite okay. Really, we're looking forward to it. But 2.5 years later, that's been a long time. But we've been quite creative, I think, in the meantime.
Yeah, I think it was. We had that rehearsal, didn't we, in January of 2020, with a view to sort of going straight into gigs. That just didn't happen. But the lockdown, we were all stuck in our respective homes, all fired up with this whole idea, and we ended up, using the time quite well. I think,
Yeah, I think we did.
Most of the new album is probably a result of that being lockdown,
So I would like, before we take a step forward, I'd like to take a step backwards and get to know more about the band and the band's origins. So could you talk me through the circumstances of the band's formation?
All right. Shall I go here first, Chris?
Yeah, mate, I'm just going to kill my phone. Hang on.
Well, right, okay. The band formed 1980/81. I think it might have been around about the end of 1980. Myself and my brother Kevin were looking for a vocalist and bass player. Put an advert, small little advert in the Melody Maker, and along came Chris and Pete. And the rest is history, really. It just clicked. First, they came down, and it was great. It's like we've known them forever anyway. And we had Ramo on keyboards at the time, and we soon started writing material, and started.
Went on from there, didn't it? Really?
Yeah, gigs all around London, really.
And do you remember the first gig you did at Marquis?
The first gig, Chris. God, the very first gig.
Where was it?
It wasn't the Thomas of Beckett. It took us quite a while to get in there, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was that pub in Battersea. I think it was called the Battersea Fair or something. The pub.
Yeah.
No stage, just a big open bar floor. And I think that must have been the first gig. To be honest,
the kind of timeline and everything blurs into one. We were so proactive playing live that
and then it was
it just filled the time.
Walmer Castle, Peckham, Greenwich, wasn't it? All over the place, really. And,
the White Swan in Greenwich, Black Swan in Blackheath.
But really, we were only time we formed and started playing. It was only just a little bit over a year, really, Chris, wasn't it? We crammed a lot in, didn't we?
We certainly did. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, so London had quite a vibrant scene back then, right? Music scene.
Yeah, it was good fun back in the day. It's all changed now. Too many drum machines now.
So, would you say there was any camaraderie between Marquis De Sade and other bands from London, such as Chariot, Iron Maiden, or Praying Mantis?
Well, I think some of the guys might have known some of in other bands, but really, I think we just kept ourselves to ourselves, really.
Yeah, I mean, I did have
from Iron Maiden when Paul Sampson and the band Samson were together, and I was friends with Paul Samson and knew the rest of the band. And then, of course, someone got the big break and joined Iron Maiden. But that's the only kind of connection that I had with them. Rest of the guys, we just played the same venues and waved at each other as we pulled up in the van. It was very kind of
good.
On to the next gig.
We did a support slot, didn't we, with Magnum?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
and we also did the support with Samson as well, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We supported Samson and Stray as well, if you remember.
Wow. Yeah, they're still together. They're still busy until today. Stray's quite a long. Been together quite a long time.
Stray would be going now for 50 years, I think.
Indeed.
Because I was at school when their album came out.
Amazing.
So it's incredible, really. And it is amazing how these bands, longevity, how they keep going and they come back. And it's the same with us, really. It's amazing, really, how we've all now come together again.
So, Chris, didn't you ever consider him replacing Bruce and Samson?
I did audition. I can remember going to the audition. It was somewhere. It was a rehearsal room somewhere in Camden. But on the day, as I recall, on the day I was absolutely awful. It just didn't gel for me at all. I was in a band called Voyeur at the time. That were touring, but it didn't work with Samson for me, which turned out to be a good thing in the long run, because now we're back with Marquis De Sade, and well, really, I never left. Marquis De Sade has always been part of my psyche in everything I did. So it never stopped.
So why had the band stopped?
I think there was a bit of something wasn't right at the end of the gig with Magnum. It wasn't Magnum. It was the one after, wasn't it? And
it was the gig with Stray.
Yeah, there was a bit of a bit of an argument at the end of that gig, really. We won't go into that. It's a bit.
Was arguing, but it wasn't me, and it wasn't Gareth.
It was the beer speaking, maybe.
But we did continue maybe for 3 or 4 gigs after that without the keyboards, and it wasn't right, really, Chris, was it? And to be honest, as I remember, it just fizzled out. It fizzled out.
It did. We never really split up as a band, I don't think. Or friends for that matter. No. It just kind of came to a natural kind of impasse. And yeah, as you say, it fizzled out, and we went and did our separate things, so...
Yeah.
So, in fact, you're mentioning the keyboards. Back in the early 1980s, there weren't many metal bands that used keyboards. Did this cause the band to be alienated from the rest of the emerging metal scene?
I don't think so.
To be honest, we were tagged with the new wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah.
But I don't ever think that we really fitted into that category. It's just one of those things. It's around at the time. We're playing on the pub scene with the likes of all the bands like Praying Mantis and Maiden and Saxon. They're all doing it. And because we were there and we were a rock band. I think we were slightly different because we had the keyboards. The other bands didn't. They were standard setup, 2 guitars, lead and rhythm, bass, vocals and drums.
So you stood out more because of the keyboards?
I think we did.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I in my opinion, the quality of Marquis De Sade's music, I've been listening to it in the rundown to this interview. The music has withstood the test of time quite well. Do you have this same impression when you recently started rehearsing the early repertoire?
Gary, if you don't mind, I'll go on this one.
Go on, Chris.
I think when I first started, especially with Marquis De Sade, you kind of listen to all the other bands that are on the circuit, and you kind of try and emulate a lot of what you would call, with me especially, what I'd call my favourite vocalists. For example, Dave Byron from Uriah Heep was always a favourite of mine. You know, I was listening to bands like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and obviously vocally you're trying to kind of find your own way, but and also emulate some of what they do. What's changed now is I've found my own way. I've found my vocal. So in that sense, although the vocal remains Marquis De Sade for sure, but it's a lot stronger with a lot more emotion. It's come a long way from what it was in the beginning.
So, Chris, how have you kept your voice in shape since in the last 40 years?
Well, it's got a big bath.
Yeah.
In the shower. No, when I left, or when Marquis De Sade came to an end, I kind of wandered around singing in covers bands for a while, and then I got involved in the theatre, of all things. And one of the bands I was in, the management sent me off to the Blackheath Conservatoire of Music to be classically trained or had vocal training. And I found that I had a first tenor voice, which came as quite a surprise. And basically, I've just used that training all my life. I sing in a band here in Spain called Flash. They're all Spanish boys.
What type of this Spanish band?
It goes from rock andaluz, which is a local kind of rock and metal scene, going through to 70s, 80s and 90s rock music, to be honest. I mean, I'm singing Queen, from Queen songs to Alan Parsons Project, Van Halen, Toto, plus the Spanish songs. So that's kind of kept my vocal going.
I sense that the music of Marquis De Sade contains a significant element of prog in the music. So to what extent did prog bands influence Marquis De Sade?
Well,
personally, none whatsoever. I'm afraid I'm a metalhead, always have been. Too many, it's quite odd, too many keyboards tend to push me away, but it somehow works in Marquis De Sade, and always will.
I mean, I've seen some vintage photos of your brother Pete wearing Rush shirts.
Yeah.
We all had Rush shirts, didn't we, back in the day?
All Rush fans. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So you produced a video of London Air recently, a song that first appeared in your 1981 demo. Did you re-record that song, or are we listening to the old recording there?
No, it's a new recording, brand new recording, and the idea was just to keep, because of lockdown, we wanted to let people know that we were still active, and we felt it would be nice to do one of the older numbers, because it was only ever a demo originally anyway, and we recorded that, I think, just in a couple of days, Chris, didn't we, really?
We did,
demo.
yeah.
And they were just one hit done in one take. Amazing really at the time. And as Pete was saying, it was so fast when we recorded it originally. I think we've matured a little bit. We've slowed down a little bit now, and it's still the same song. It still sounds great, and it's going to be great when we play it live, I'm sure. Can't wait.
So that song clearly has an environmental theme to it. So what about your other songs? What themes do you deal with in the other Marquis De Sade songs?
Well,
it depends who write the lyrics.
Yeah. Well,
I wrote a few songs about kind of death and destruction. I think Gary, your lyrics are, I mean, so different to mine.
Yeah.
It depends who write the lyrics. That's how. I think that's what makes up the song. Whoever writes the lyrics at the time.
I think mine back in the day, 40 years ago, I was really into the science fiction, and we did a track called "Cloning," and it's still quite vibrant in its content now.
Because
it's still
contemporary in its thing. Yes,
and we're going to refresh that, and we're going to hopefully record that at a later date. We've got so many old songs from the locker, which we do want to bring out. Suspended Animation, another one.
Which you never recorded, you mean?
We never recorded that, but luckily enough, there was an old recording from the Thomas of Becket, and someone recorded it on an old Philips cassette player, and so I got to listen to that. And it's quite funny actually, because I wrote the lyrics, I could always remember the chorus, but I couldn't remember the verses in between. And so I played back the Thomas of Becket, and I thought this would be great, because when I hear these lyrics, I can just refresh it and just rewrite them. But the audio was so terrible, and that you couldn't hear it, so I've had to rewrite 3 verses in the middle, totally rewrite it. The song remains the same, and there's other ones as well. Black Angel, which is one of Chris's and Pete's. And we're going to do that again. So there are some old numbers we're going to play again. But with lockdown, we've been able to be creative and write new material. And I think the new material today is very, very strong.
It's stunning. It's not strong, it's stunning.
So how should a Marquis De Sade sound like? Do you have certain rules on what should go in? Or is it totally organic, the way you write songs?
I don't know. What do you think, Giles? Because, I mean, you're kind of the newest member, although it feels like you've been with us from day one. But, I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think...
I don't know. I think we all bring our own sort of style to it, but there seems... perhaps there's a difference in style now compared to the material, from 1980, but... when we re-recorded the older stuff, I think it's pretty coherent. I think everything hangs together pretty well. Why that is, I don't know. I mean, we come from very different backgrounds, don't we? So
that's for sure. Yeah.
I think what is going to naturally happen is that 40 years down the line now, technology's changed. Keyboards are changing. All the instruments, are basically changing. Recording techniques are going to change, so it's going to sound different. It's going to sound fresher, in my opinion. And with Giles now as well, and the keyboards and Paulie on board, it's going to sound fantastic. And
Paul is part of the family, so you're based almost the same lineup. Not exactly, but almost. So it's pretty much.
If we go back, Kevin, my brother passed away back in November 2018. Which is nearly 4 years ago, nearly now, I suppose, isn't it? Now, there was talk before of us getting back together. It was always just a little bit of talk, because we kept in touch. And we had then a memorial gig for Kevin to celebrate his life. And that was in Croydon. And that was back in June 2019. And... I'd mentioned previously to Giles if he'd be interested. Giles obviously yes. But Pete came all the way down from, I think, Northampton, isn't it, Chris?
That's right, mate, yeah.
So Pete came down to the gig, and that's where Pete then met Giles for the first time.
We were playing like a funk set, basically. It was like 3-piece kind of...
So in a way, it was thanks to your late brother that the band got together in a way.
And Pete then meets Giles, because we need keyboards. But then Pete actually saw Giles playing, and when Giles starts playing Fanfare for the Common Man, well, that's an audition in itself. He'll get 30 bands for playing that.
You mentioned
and as Pete said, he came up to me and he said, "That Giles, he's mustard." So and then they got talking, and one thing leads to another. But then Obviously, because we haven't got Kevin anymore, the brothers, Pete and Chris, were talking then to Paulie. And Paulie, straight away, I think, Chris, didn't he? I mean, he was...
Yeah, I mean,
If you think Paul was, I think 11, 12 years old when he used to come on the road with us in the back of the van as a roadie.
Yeah.
And when we eventually, like when this came about, and we asked him if he'd like to be part of Marquis De Sade, he said, mate, he said, I've been waiting for this for all my life.
So he knew the material already by then. Before he even played the notes, he knew the material.
I think the one thing about us really, which is we are like a family unit. Originally, there was myself and Kevin, two brothers. Mm-hmm. Pete and Chris, two brothers. But now there are three brothers. And then there's now, I've lost my brother, but I've got Giles. Mm-hmm. And we've known each other now for 15 16 years or so. And so it's still like a family unit, which is great, and playing together really well.
It just works, doesn't it? It just works as a unit, as a band. It works.
And there's lots of creative ideas. Giles has got lots of creative, and it's great now writing new material as well, because the new material that we've been writing over lockdown. Can't wait to get it out.
So what do the new songs sound like, or what's this?
Well, it's hard to explain in a way, really, because we're bringing...
It's still Marquis De Sade.
We've got the old material, and we want it then, the old material, to come and stand alongside the new material. So when we put it in on the album, we've got some older songs, but then we've got new. And it's all down to production techniques, I think, really, and the way it's all, the continuity. I think it works in that I've written a song, Belvedere, which is based on MC Escher and works of art, and it's all the fantastic. And if you look at suspended animation and cloning and living in the Ice Age, there's a certain aura about all these songs. I think it just works. Yeah. I think it just works.
And will you be playing some of these new songs next month?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got some new material. I just can't wait to get. We've got a couple of rehearsals coming up prior to the gig. So it's going to be a busy weekend, I think, that weekend.
Of course, we've done a few rehearsals, haven't we? Thinking we had gigs before we were all locked down. But But anyway.
Giles, your background is prevalently in classical music. So how do you feel about playing with a metal band?
Well, I was classically trained, and I actually worked. My first proper job was with EMI Records, working at Abbey Road as in the classical engineering side. But that was never really my thing. I mean, I was always a blues and a jazz and a rock player. And in fact, when I was at Abbey Road, I discovered this Hammond organ sitting there covered in dust, and it turned out to be quite a historic instrument. And I used to go there at lunchtimes and just sort of play on this thing. And I was really influenced by people like Jimmy Smith and the jazz and blues players on the organ. But then, all these kind of rock legends were coming through the place.
For example?
Well, Jimmy Page.
You worked with
Robert Plant.
With Jimmy Page?
I didn't actually work with him. I did better than that. I jammed with Jimmy Page. Wow. When he was not working, but he'd done a session and they finished. And we just sat there. Robert Plant, they were doing a thing together. Roger Daltrey. I mean, people, they were just coming through. It's Abbey Road, these... And I was sitting there, and I did quite a few sessions on the Hammond organ there, which allegedly was used by Pink Floyd and the Beatles and all this. That became my thing, the Hammond organ. And of course, Uriah Heep and Deep Purple and these kind of
John
things.
Lord, of course.
Right, so that was kind of, this is what I was listening to, and this is so classical training. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you end up doing. If you've got a classical training, we talk about shredding. Those classical players have got the best technique.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Chris, just one more quick question about your brother Pete. After Marquis De Sade fizzled out, Pete went on to play with quite a few metal bands, such as Blind Fury, Soldier, and Angel Witch, to name a few.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, became more involved in pop music. How come?
I'm not really sure. What we were always friends with the guys from Angel Witch and Drive Shaft, Blind Fury, all of those guys, and Pete was asked to play bass for Angel Witch, and I was kind of approached by two guys in a bar one evening, and I thought, okay, one side by side here like this, and they started chatting, and they said, look, we're producing a demo for these record companies, and we're looking for a vocalist. And I just kind of went down and sung on these demos and didn't think any more of it, and then ended up joining this band called Voyeur, that I ended up being with for a long time. But it was kind of an odd thing. They were kind of a cross between Bon Jovi and Duran Duran. It was an odd mix, and for some reason it never, although we were opening for big names, we were doing our own tours, we ended up playing across America. One year, I can't even remember what year that was now, but it didn't really take off. We could never get anyone to really to give us a record deal. It was just crazy. We could play anywhere and fill the place up, but the biggest thing was, and it was an expression that always stuck with me, we don't know where to put you.
Which was just one of those expressions, you know, we don't know where to put you. Well, how about putting us on your label, you know? You know.
But I continued on. I mean, and then in my 40s, I went back to the theatre, and I'd done a few shows. I played the American in Chess. I've done Les Mis in concert. I've done the Phantom in concert, Miss Saigon in concert. So I'm quite active in the theatre. And then, of course, coming to Spain, I started doing a cabaret act on the coast. And then as the years went by, one day my wife said to me, look, why don't you ring the Marquis De Sade guys up, and like HR Records have just released the album. Why don't you see if the guys want to get back together? And
there it is. So Chris, do you think this experience of yours in working in musicals helped you in Marquis De Sade in the sense, you know, your stage presence helps you give a more dynamic stage presence, do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always been a bit of a drama queen on stage.
Which is what you want with them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Need to work
and of course, like acting and singing is all part of that. But I think the band that really brought that out was a band called Asher Wolfish. I was in with my brother Paulie for a while, for about a year or so. Amazing music, amazing guys, Malcolm Davis and a young lady by the name of Donna. Great stuff, really dramatic. And when Marquis De Sade came back on the scene, it all kind of gelled back in again. It all became part of what it should have been in the first place.
I'm particularly curious about Blind Fury, which basically were the band Satan without Brian Ross on vocals.
Yeah.
Did you ever see them live? Because I've never heard that lineup.
No, I mean, I didn't really...
Just sorry to interrupt. To remind who's watching this interview, your brother Pete played bass with them.
Yeah, he did, yeah. Pete played bass with them.
I only saw him a couple of times because I was always out with my band and he was always out with them. So really, we kind of, although we're close as brothers, we never really kind of got within the same venue at the same time as each other. We were always off playing somewhere. So really, I never got involved in much of what he was doing around that time, as he never got involved with what I was doing. So I can't really have an opinion on that. I know they were good bands. They were great bands. I really enjoyed Drive Shaft and Angel Witch. I always enjoyed, but I never really saw much of them because I was always out doing my thing, as Pete was out doing his thing. So I really can't answer that question in the right way.
It's the same really for me with Kevin back in the day, because Kevin went on to play with a band called Sensei, and they were great. They were based over in Tooting, and I'll tell you, he came to life, Kev, later on in years, and it's such a shame that we lost him when we did, because I mean, that's not to say Paul, he couldn't have joined the band and we could have had 2 guitars. It would have been,
why not?
But anything goes really. But to lose Kev the way we did was so sad. But, and I just want to say for the record really that we're doing it and we're keeping his spirit alive, because some of the old songs that he wrote were fantastic when we sat down and used to write them. And
I mean, I agree entirely. I mean, I assume you know that I lost my wife a few weeks ago. She passed away, and I kind of lost my way for a week. But the band has given me purpose. So even though she's gone, I still have a purpose. I can still get out there, and I'm going to do it for her.
Yeah.
Gary, you also played in a band called Sanctus, right? What do you remember of that?
You've done your homework.
I always do my homework. I have a reputation of doing my research.
Okay, well look.
What do you remember of that band?
Yeah, what do I remember? I remember, we're going back now a few years, obviously. We're still going back.
This was after Marquis De Sade, not before.
After Marquis De Sade split up, Ramo went on to form Sanctus. Now, I think that might have been 1 or 2 years after we split.
Yeah, it was, because you remember, Gaz, you came down with that video with you and Ramo. You came down to where Voyeur was rehearsing to show us the video.
Of Sanctus, okay.
Oh, well, I mean, Chris has got a better memory than me. But I'm getting a bit older now. And I remember the guy that used to... we used to call him Bomber Bradley when we were back in the day, and in a way he was the 6th member of the band because he did all our fireworks and the lighting and the PA, and he started picking up the bass and playing bass. Now he went off with Ramo to play bass with Sanctus. I did hear a demo, and I think there was a bit of something going on with their drummer at the time, so Ramo then approached me and said, would I like to join Sanctus? I don't think I played any live gigs with them.
And you never recorded anything with them?
And I don't think I've recorded. We got in the studio and did a few bits, but there wasn't any, and I think it feels like maybe just a few months with them really. I think then they reformed back with their drummer again. And that's the way things were back in the day. You're in and out of bands.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And of course, and like Kev had gone off and he was playing with a few guys, a few musicians and bands, and I, like Chris and Pete, although you're still brothers and you're talking, you lose touch musically a bit because he moved off in one direction and I was going in other directions. To be honest, I must have packed up playing for a few years. It was only then when I picked up with Giles again that we started, we had interest in music obviously, and we started playing. We formed our band Time Is Tight, and we play Jimmy Smith and Green Onions, and we play
Booker T and the MGs.
Booker T and the MGs, and
Hannah Morgan stuff.
Yeah, and there's just the 3 of us, and we'll do the odd fair here and there, little function. It kept the hand in, kept me going, and it's great, and we've still got a few that we're going to be doing soon.
So this will be our first album once, hopefully, you'll record them.
The new album we're doing.
That was.
This is.
Explain to me what the contents of that LP contain.
Right, this LP. High Roller approached me. It must have been about 11 or 12 years ago now,
Yeah, some time ago.
And there's obviously a lot of interest in the band in Europe.
Yeah.
Now it's amazing because and just to put the record straight, when we recorded the single, we self-financed it. And there's been a lot of talk on websites about how many singles were produced. Some people put it 5,000 and whatever. No, we could afford to get 1,000 pressed, 1,000 singles. I went to collect them one afternoon and they hadn't finished them all, so I went to the depot where they produced and dispatched the vinyl, and I picked up 500 copies. And the idea was, take those 500 away, we could start putting them in the covers and sell them at gigs, and then we'll pick up the other 500. But the band broke and split. The other 500 were never ever picked up. So as far as I know, they must have just melted them down. So there are only over 500 singles. And the single with Somewhere Up in the Mountains and Black Angel is on this album. Now, I don't think, there was never a master copy, so they must have taken the old singles and recorded.
It's a sort of compilation, you can say.
It's a compilation, and then also with the demo tape that we did with Living in the Ice Age.
The closest you've ever come to an album, you could say.
Yeah.
Fans can keep in touch with more confirmed gigs via your Facebook page, I assume, right?
For sure, yeah. And the website.
And the website.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's what I had planned to ask. I don't know if there's any message you'd like to send out to wrap this up.
Well, just from me, guys, thanks for all your support. It's been a great help to me with the loss of my wife. You've just been great. Your messages of support have been fantastic, and I can't wait to see you all. And let's keep on rocking. Keep on rocking, guys. Let's keep rocking.